Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here. Another episode of Meaningful Live. It's good to be here. We'll be speaking about how to deal with unethical leaders. As you may see, we put up a poll. Is religion synonymous with morality? Love to hear you weigh in on this. This program is dedicated by Judy Kirk in honor of her daughter, Ayla Davida Batsheva Kirk, with gratitude to Hashem for her complete healing and blessings for success, health, and peace. It's both a painful topic, but actually one of the ones that I always prefer speaking about, simply because it's so critical to discuss, and so many don't want to talk about it. The issue of leadership, ethics, and how do you deal with unethical leaders. Now, leaders can be all types of leaders: political leaders, business leaders. We're talking about leaders in education, in different industries, in entertainment. But I think we all understand that the question becomes quite acute and far more pronounced and amplified when we're dealing with religious leaders. Religious leaders who are supposed to be representing a higher standard, higher values. So when you see a religious leader behaving unethically, obviously it's far more glaring. In truth is, we should demand of all our leaders to live up to the highest possible standards. But as I said, religion is officially supposed to be about living a life, a more refined life, a less arrogant life, a more humble life. So how do you address a thing like this? And I, of course, deal with this all the time because as someone who's out there, people always ask me that question. And I'll be very honest. I think many people have been turned off by religion and by any established form of, we'll call it an established form, established religions or established systems, because they've seen its leaders as corrupt as anyone else. And the hypocrisy and the double standards and so on turns anyone off. Again, if someone is not claiming to be a leader, especially a religious leader, it's also not appropriate to behave in an unethical way. But especially someone that is representing that. And who knows how many stories throughout history that have demonstrated this dissonance, this disconnect. But especially if you think from the times of the Enlightenment, in the last few centuries, one of the things that really, what science and the new open-minded thinkers were arguing was that no, the church and religion are not above the law. It's not like they have a monopoly on truth, and they too have to be subject to accountability, because it was very obvious that there were those that consider themselves as being immutable, meaning that they cannot make a mistake, they were infallible, and there was no such thing as challenging them, which of course allows for all the corruption to come. We all talk about the classic story of Galileo, how he was forced to recant by the church some of his scientific findings because it countered their doctrine. And this was a classical example used where in Woody Allen's famous biting joke, where the atheist, the niece is asking, or atheist granddaughter is asking her grandfather, says, "You're such a religious man. If you had to choose between God and the truth, which one would you choose?" Do you hear the question? Between God and the truth. And without missing a beat, he says, "Of course, God." Which again captures the sentiment that it's a blind type of faith that has nothing to do with reality or truth, and just people buy into it, which includes as well, doesn't matter whether it's ethical or not ethical, the behavior of people has always demonstrated a certain type of inconsistency. Now, we all know no human being is perfect, so there's no one that's going to live up to perfection. The question is, are they aspiring to live up to it? Are they accountable? Are they transparent? And that's what I want to address. Because yes, our leaders should be expected to live up to a higher standard if you want to be a leader. especially a religious leader. Now, for many, religion is not necessarily associated and synonymous with morality, as sad as it may sound. Now, say 1 second. We see time and again religious people and religious leaders, push comes to shove, and they get exposed, and you see, hey, just like everybody else. It's just an illusion. Now, from time to time, you'll find people, of course, that do live up to higher standards, but that not necessarily because they're religious. You find also people in the secular world that do that. In other words, it has nothing to do with religion per se. It has to do with who the person is. Some people are just more moral, more ethical, more trustworthy. And I think the word trust is also a critical one. Because trust, what engenders trust? When you know that the person, what they're preaching, they practice what they preach. That you can expect that when they say something, they themselves live up to it. You find out that they're telling you not to do something, and they themselves are doing it consistently. That not only undermines your trust in them, it undermines trust in that whole system. And here I tell the nightmares and the thousands of instances I personally have experienced, and I'm sure much more that you or others have experienced, is exactly why so many have been turned off from certain systems and so on, because you say, 1 second, the person who was teaching this to me was the one that was constantly defying it. You find priests, clergy, or other leaders who are abusive, any form of abuse, including sexual abuse, then what happens is you do throw out the baby with the bathwater, because if that's the representative of this school of thought or this faith, the faith-based system and ethics and morals, that they abused me or other people, then you say to yourself, 1 second here, and that's what happens. It toxifies the whole system. In other words, even the good things become contaminated and polluted in our eyes. And that's why it's a terrible crime. Worse than the crime itself is the fact that you're stealing. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have told me my faith in God was stolen from me. My faith, my innocence, my impressionable childhood where I was eager to hear something, to learn something, to be inspired, to be touched, was stolen from me. I was betrayed, I was violated. And that is the saddest part of it all. One of the deepest aspects of abuse, especially of children, is the fact that it's coming from a place that's supposed to come from someone that loves you. If it's coming from a stranger, the abuse, it's also unacceptable. But when someone loves you, and you see one day they love you, and the next day they behave in a way that is horrible. So for the child, children are simple and straight, and they don't understand that duplicity. And it creates confusion. What is good? What is bad? Does good always come with bad? People begin to expect that the one who loves me is going to hurt me. I remember once sitting with someone who came for counseling, and I remember just coming to a conversation. She was sitting here, I was sitting here, and I went over and lifted up a book or something, and this person flinched and withdrew, like as if something. And I said, "What's the matter?" "I thought you were going to hit me, strike me." I said, "Why?" We were having a pleasant conversation. There was nothing that provoked anything like that. And we reviewed it. It became clear that in general, people who have been kind to her at some point hurt her. So it's like you build in a certain reflex, certain like very sensitive antennae to things that are not even intended. You start expecting that those that love you are going to hurt you. Think how terrible that is, and how that undermines trust, the ability to build relationships in your life. So what we're dealing with here has very deep implications. It's not just some theoretical thing. So the question really is how we address it. So that I think we all can agree that it's just horrendous to hear that someone you considered a hero, someone who was teaching the doctrine of ethics and morality, then you find behaves in another way. We're not talking about a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. But you find that in a consistent way. The person is a complete hypocrite. How devastating that could be. The question is, how do we both immunize ourselves and look at the reality of life while still not compromising? Because we don't want to lose our faith in our values. Yeah, it's easy to become cynical. Hey, they're all the same. Everybody falls, everybody fails, but everybody will disappoint. You want to be able to preserve and hold on to values So there's a few things that need to be stated very clearly. And I'm speaking from a Torah and Jewish perspective that addresses this very issue. I think a good contrast would be the study in contrast is I don't know if this is urban legend or not, the story about Bertrand Russell. They say I'll use it. If it's not, if it never happened, it could have happened, not with him, with someone else. So I'm not trying to in any way besmirch his reputation. But what they say is that Bertrand Russell once I think he had an affair with a student of his, and the Cambridge, they called him in as, how could you behave? You're a professor of ethics. How could you behave unethically? And his response was, I also teach mathematics, and I'm not a triangle. In other words, what I teach is not what I am. What I am is not what I teach. You can teach something, there's a certain dissonance and separation. You could have a doctor teaching you how smoking kills, and you can be a smoker. Let's contrast that with Maimonides. Maimonides, the Rambam, writes the following. How do you know who's a wise person? So it's not, you don't look at his oratory skills, at his brilliance, at his arguments, at the way he presents a case, how persuasive. You look at how he behaves, how he walks, how he talks, how he eats, how he drinks, how he sleeps, how he deals with people. Now you think, 1 second, what does one thing have to do with the next? Of course, it's exemplary behavior. A person behaves in a refined way. But we're talking here about brilliance, about a chacham, a wise person. Because what Maimonides is saying is the ultimate wisdom is the objective, is to create a seamlessness between what you teach and what you know and how you behave. Yes, we all will make mistakes, but let's not worship it. Let's not deify that disconnect. In many ways, I'm not saying all, but in many ways there have been scientists and thinkers who say, 1 second, I'm the objective scientist. I look at things like you look at through a glass, and I don't look at me to be the example of what I am teaching. Two separate things. The mind is an academic pursuit, has nothing to do with the way I behave. And you see this across the board. You see it in art, in music. Some of the artists, most obnoxious films have been made, stories have been told, books have been written. Brilliant in their art, but also extremely arrogant, extremely selfish, narcissistic. So, okay, when it comes to art and other things, when you create a beautiful piece of art, then you find out this person's just a lowlife. Does it in some way compromise their art? So that already, you can argue the point. I feel yes, because you'd like to believe the person creating art has that standard and they're looking to live up to it. But I can understand that someone can be genius and create a beautiful art and beautiful music, and they themselves are not a piece of art and not a piece of music. But it's not a standard you want to perpetuate. You'd say, hey, you know what? I'm human. Well, Maimonides is telling us that there is an expectation that you're living up. So that's why. No, you're not going to be proud of the fact that because I'm not just because I teach mathematics, I'm not a triangle. You're not going to be proud of the fact. You'll say the contrary. As a professor of ethics, as a teacher of ethics, I should expect of myself a higher standard. And if I fall, I'll be accountable. I'll be transparent. And I'll say that's part of the lesson I'm teaching you students. You should be accountable. Because at the end of the day, how could you teach morality and not teach accountability? Is morality just an abstract science, an abstract idea? Part of it is accountability. So if the teacher is not being accountable and they don't see ethics as so important, can they really be credible? Can you really hear it from them? So I would say yes, when it comes to real estate or it comes to maybe even art or music, you could make the argument there, you listen to me, I'll give you real estate tips. The fact that I may be arrogant or I may be obnoxious or I may be somebody despicable, but at least you're getting those secrets. So there, I think most of us can say, okay, it's still not the optimal, but when it comes to someone teaching you about spirituality, about ethics, about refinement, it would be that person, part of being refined is that I'm honest. And it could say, where none of us are perfect, but we aspire to that. And I think that would do a tremendous service to all of us. Because again, so many people have been turned off by religion and by different systems when they realize that the teachers, the rabbis, the clergy, the leaders, they're not in any way different than all of us. Maybe they're smarter. They know more. But are they examples of seeking refinement, seeking transcendence? You see a person who is supposed to be teaching these higher standards, and then when it comes down, push comes to shove, what do you find? That person gets down their arms and then they can be just as cruel and hostile and obnoxious as anyone. So you say, where did all the teachings go? What happened? So you want to be able to, a person says, look, I'm not perfect, but this is what we work toward. So that idea of that seamlessness. Now I want to add one more thing that I think is good, important point. Quantum mechanics has already established that the observer affects the observee. There's a word like that. That the observer affects the things he or she observes. That no, we are not just the subjective observer of reality around us, but our very observation and our very measurements and so on affect that which we observe. I was thinking about it in that same context. At some point, we're coming to learn that the universe is one symbiotic whole. Yes, it may be made up of many parts, but there's a certain intricate and intrinsic connection that connects it all. So at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a surprise to us that our behavior perhaps affects the things that are around us. Can we really create harmony around us and world peace and coexistence if we ourselves are not geared up to that? In other words, perhaps the subatomic particles and all the other elements of the DNA of existence are I wouldn't say the word observe, experience the dissonance within us, and therefore that alone does not allow for us to create that total harmony. I mean, there's controversy around, there was a book called, I believe, what was it called? I forgot the Science of Water. It was a Japanese researcher who claimed and argued, I think others debunked it, that water crystals, the particles, the atomic particles in water change shape based on the mood in the room. If it's a peaceful environment, the water joins together, these water molecules come together and they are far more beautiful and harmonious. If there's anger in the room or there's hostility, those molecules tend to turn in a way that turn a grotesque shapes and forms. You may remember a number of years ago there was a popular movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? And they cited these studies that in a way the observer affects the reality around us. So in other words, when we are in a state of mind that is more at peace, more loving, in some way the world around us reacts to that. So we all agree that there's some element of that that's true. You see that. You come to a party and the host is smiling and is warm. It affects you. It always affects you. So not just that you smile back, but just the whole mood changes the whole attitude. But you come to a party with the hosts, you feel a certain type of anger, you feel very negative energy. It affects us as well. So it's clearly an effect that happens through our own beings. The way we are within will affect that which is outside of us. But coming back to the point, what to do about unethical leaders? Look, frankly, if these are leaders that are being elected, then you have your voice, your power is in your vote. You don't need to elect someone that doesn't live up to the standard. I would like to believe, as I said, I understand certain leadership, you may say, really, we don't care about that person's behavior. But as soon as a behavior is not consistent, can you trust the leader? Is there true leadership if there's no trust? You find out the commander-in-chief of the army is doing something really inappropriate. Can you have that total trust that's necessary, especially in situations of life and death, at war and so on? So, and especially when you're dealing with leaders that are representing a standard. So our voice is that we have to demand that higher standard. And indeed, when you look in the leadership, in the biblical models of leadership, it always came down to a tremendous humility. Keep that word in mind, humility. Moses was the humblest one that walked on earth. What does humility have to do with leadership? You could say leadership is one thing. Humility is great. Give him a medal for humility, because humility cultivates trust. You know the person is humble. You know they'll be accountable, transparent. If a mistake is made, they'll acknowledge it. And as a leader, that's who you want. If you're going to trust Moses with your life, that Moses is the lawgiver, the man of God, you want to know that he is humble. So humility is one of the hallmarks of a true leader. If you go to meaningfullife.com, you'll find I've written a few articles, how to find the true rabbi. And the truth is, this applies to how to find the true leader, how to find anyone that you are looking up to, a true mentor. So I pointed out there that I'm speaking about a rabbi per se, but this truth is the same thing in any area, in any field of expertise. That there are four things necessary, the way the Torah describes the criteria for a true rabbi. One is, of course, knowledge. He or she has a body of knowledge, that he knows a certain amount of knowledge. Number two is that he has been ordained, that a rabbi before him ordains him, a rabbi who's been ordained. And essentially, ordination goes back generation to generation, all the way back to Moses. Number three is experience, what we call residency. Being an apprenticeship. Take medicine, for example. For a doctor to become a doctor, they have to have, of course, the body of knowledge, medical knowledge, and the rigorous study and the knowledge and all the information. Number two, they need to have a degree, a diploma, where doctors before them and professors are giving this person a stamp of approval. And number three, they need residency. They need experience, and they need experience in the field of medicine that they're going to practice. But there's one more thing. But for sure the most important. The person has reverence for God, for law, for justice, for virtue. You can have all the first three. You can have tremendous amount of knowledge. You can be a genius. You could have the degree, the diploma, the ordination. You've been ordained. And you could have the experience. But you don't revere, you don't respect the system that you're representing. When it comes, especially in the area of faith and morality, you don't respect it. If you fundamentally don't respect it, can this person truly be a rabbi? So they could fake it, but that's the fourth most important criteria. So you'll say, how do we know that? The first three are facts that you can verify. You can verify where he studied. You can verify who ordained the person. Look at their ordination. And you can verify their residency or their apprenticeship that they went through. How do you measure the fourth one? So I gave a simple example, and I'll give it here as well. The example, one of the ways to know. If you hear your rabbi or your so-called moral authority or mentor say something, and what they say sounds to you questionable, something but rubbing you the wrong way, so you're fully entitled, not just entitled, obligated to go over to this individual with respect, because why not? The person is innocent until proven guilty, and say, what is the source of what you just said? Where did you take it from? And you'll find three types of answers. Some will look at you with a condescending attitude. Who are you to ask me? I'm the big authority. And they just won't even give you the time of day. That's how it is, they'll say. Another will say, I don't have a source. I just had a feeling, an instinct, intuition came to me. And the third, the one that is the correct answer, will say, sure. And they share their sources, exactly where they took it from, what precedent, and so on. And then we'll say and add, and I interpreted this precedent a certain way to apply it to this situation. That's my source of why I said what I said. In other words, they will reveal to you the ability to retrace the steps so you'll be able to verify where it came from. The truth is the scientific method, when it's done correctly, without forgery, in an honest way, is exactly that. Every experiment has to be replicatable. And you have to be able to show how did you get to this place. Which is why you'll find, actually, even in secular law, which is taken from Talmudic law, that when there's a ruling, a verdict by a court, they'll always quote precedent. They're not just going to state something. They'll say in this case versus this, Omaha versus the United States of America, or Roe versus Wade, whatever it may be. This and this is what the judges said. You'll quote. You may find distinctions, but there's always going to be the retracing of steps because that's what knowledge is about. It's accumulative. It's building upon previous knowledge. And a sign of wisdom is your accepting that. It's not that you're a genius. It's that the wisdom is coming because I've seen the wisdom before me. And I'm looking to apply that to my given situation. The greatest compliment you could say in Judaism to someone is not that they're a chacham, a wise person. That's more like a smart aleck. That they're a Talmud chacham, a student of wisdom, a student of the wise. You'll always remain a student. You'll always remain that humble state that you're receiving a wisdom greater than yourself. That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for just a brilliant person with the ordination and with experience. You're looking for the person who also reveres and respects that I'm just a channel of a truth greater than myself. Any tinge of ego and arrogance, and that doesn't mean people are humans, but they do everything possible not to allow that to get in the way. And if you see that getting in the way, rest assured that there will be distortions because their own prejudices, their own biases will come into play. Now, there's a lot more that can be said about this, and I will speak about it throughout this week. Wednesday, I have a bigger class on this topic. But I wanted to just lay it out because it's such an important issue. And this is true not only with leaders, it's also how to find a healthy spouse, a soulmate, how to trust an employer or an employee, and so on. It's critical criteria that can help us in any given situation. How do you learn to trust someone? And humility and refinement, and that what they aspire to. Not whether they're perfect. Trust is not built on a perfection, it's built on accountability. And you see they aspire to that. That's a person, it's a person, there's honesty, there's integrity, there's sincerity. So I hope this was helpful. And we're here every Sunday live, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Meaningful Live. If what you heard you enjoyed or felt meaningful, please share this with others. Please subscribe to our growing YouTube channel and our offerings that we have, a weekly newsletter with many great ideas, as well as checking out our website, meaningfullife.com. We have a full array of calendar and a full array of offerings that cover really the entire spectrum of life. This has been Simon Jacobson of Meaningful Life, the Meaningful Life Center, meaningfullife.com. Be well and be blessed. Thank you.